there. All right, good evening. I'm Keith Bergman, the Town Administrator, and we are here tonight for a Complete Streets Prioritization Plan public forum. And Littleton has gotten quite a lot of credit for having one of the best complete streets policies in the nation. And what we're hoping to do now is to follow up the policy with some further evidence of what complete streets look like in our community. That we were not only one of the first communities in Massachusetts to adopt a complete streets policy. Our Board of Selectmen approved one in December of 2013. We were also one of the first communities to be certified by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation under its Complete Streets program. We received our certification at Tier 1 of their program by having our policy approved. We thought that was great because if you look at the model policy that they compare other communities with, it's our policy. So we were pleased about that. And what that got us was a Tier 2, so-called Tier 2 planning grant, where we have technical assistance to develop a prioritization plan for complete streets. So that's our immediate mission for this summer, is to develop that plan. And ultimately what we're looking at is to be able to submit a construction application under so-called Tier 3 of the program for up to $400,000 in funding from Mass DOT. So we hope to do that later this year. So to take us on this Complete Streets journey, the town has again engaged the services of Green International, who does an awful lot of our roadway engineering work in Littleton and does a lot of work in a lot of places. And we're happy to have their team here tonight to walk us through this process. And let me just start by introducing from the team leader, Bill Scully. Bill, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Keith. Is this blocking by any chance?
Nope.
The screen?
Nope, not at all.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you again. We're glad to be here. With me tonight is Jason Goggin from our office and Isabel Kalbish from Clarendon Hill Consulting, who is working with us related with some planning and GIS expertise. Tonight, I'm going to go through a few things, and really the purpose of tonight, we've been on board for a while. As Keith mentioned, we're developing that Tier 2 prioritization plan, which is needed prior to being able to apply for actual implementation grants from Mass DOT. But I thought I would go through a little bit of overview. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Complete Streets, what they are, a little bit with what the DOT program is, and try to give you a sense of the types of actions that are eligible to be funded by the program. And then we'll get into what we've been working on in Littleton itself. We've been going through what we call a needs assessment, so we're inventorying information, reviewing existing documents and existing plans and reports, and trying to pull information together, and ultimately ending up with areas of need, opportunities that we can start to piece together as part of the Tier 2 plan. The purpose of tonight, what we really want to do is walk out of here later with a little bit of verification that what we're seeing, we're on target, but also in addition to that, you might have some specific areas, issues, needs, things that we haven't seen. As we go through the process, we couldn't study every single piece of road in the town, but we'll identify where we have been looking. And a lot of the techniques and the items that ultimately become part of the plan can certainly be applied to many locations, even beyond what we've looked at. So, to start, I got to orient myself. So, well, I've gone through the purpose already. So complete streets. So this is a definition from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. There's many organizations that have defined it, and they range from engineering to public health to planning, and at this point in time, amazingly, we're all sort of on the same page that really a road, a public right-of-way that has a street in it, should be designed to accommodate everyone. So we should be paying attention to the best of our ability to the pedestrians, to bicyclists, to businesses that have truck deliveries, handicapped, children, elderly, all of it. And we try to look at now the public way as a way everyone travels between point A and point B. These are some examples of complete streets, and more you have seen them or will see them as you travel around the Commonwealth. But you can see that, you can see pictures of someone in the wheelchair, the elderly crossing, the bicycle up on the right-hand corner. The concept really has evolved over time. I can remember in the late 80s we were starting to talk about it. And then we got into traffic calming, slowing traffic down, neighborhood traffic management plans. And then we got to safe routes to school plans. And at this point in time, it's really embracing all of that. And you're trying to have reasonable speeds and make the environment comfortable. Make not even just for walking, but in a center area, downtown, a village, make it comfortable that they congregate on the sidewalk as a sense of place. Examples of some incomplete streets. So here you can see a very wide road. This isn't not all this reflects Littleton, but examples. Very wide road.
Looks like Westford.
Nothing to. This is Westford. This is what Westford is. Sidewalks where the corner rounding the curb is blocking access onto it, or a sidewalk. Many times you may be driving and you see a sidewalk that ends, goes nowhere. And now what do you do? Another with a bus shelter, and it's way up the hill. There's not even a pad waiting for the bus. These are examples of some complete streets. And again, I'm not saying they are intended for Littleton, but they're techniques. So where one community had a very wide road with a lot of lanes, they went to what we call a road diet, and within that existing area, we defined, or it got defined to be 2 lanes of travel, and then maybe a parking lane, maybe a bike lane, a bump out where you start to reduce the opening on a road where someone crosses. So you bump out the sidewalk a bit, or you define driveways better. Instead of having 40 or 50 or 60-foot openings and no sidewalk really defined, you narrow it down to a normal driveway and provide a sidewalk connection. Street trees. This is an example. This one I think is in Cambridge. So this was a bump out in a very high type of markings for crosswalk with signage. So you've reduced the width and you've identified it better with signage and the wide markings. And again, rose street trees, sometimes that just has, in theory, a calming effect. Even if it only slows traffic down a few miles an hour, it's still an effect. Another example of some treatment, this is in Framingham, a high type crosswalk, a different color. So it again can be seen or highlighted better. The signal on the right side, and this is a very busy road, but it's where the Compstrtwrkshp Trail crosses Old Connecticut Path, so they used a higher type of a signal so that as people come up to the crossing, they hit the button and it flashes and, yes sir.
Oh, do you want any questions at the end, or?
We'll have some, if I can get through it, then we'll do questions on general items, and then, if that's all right, and then we'll have, go through our Littleton and have more questions, and ultimately, we'd like to just stop and have a conversation. Again, this is just an example. So on the left side, It's a road in Norfolk. Two-lane road, but they really tried to be careful of, they provided 2 lanes, but wide enough shoulders that bicyclists can travel, where there were a couple of intersecting streets for crossings, and in this case, there was a little sight distance issue, so they had a little beacon, but it provides access to a major recreation area in the town, so they were able to provide one sidewalk on one side of the street, bicycle accommodation, and you can drive, walk, or bike to the rec center. And that's just on the right side, a picture of a roundabout. Sometimes with signal control, instead of having signal control, you might use a roundabout to control traffic and again, break up the visual and slow traffic down. Again, potential elements, so these are different markings, different types of signage. You'll hear us say later about bicycle accommodation, and part of that is parking for bikes. And what they're finding is if you don't provide any parking for bikes anywhere, it's just one more thing of someone's attitude is not driving a bike. Traffic calming measures, speed reductions, again, medians or something to break up the pavement, reduce the crossing. But why important, and again, it goes back to the overall concept of it, is it provides for safe movement. It allows safe movement by all types of users, better health, they're finding even stronger economies. You start to reduce pavement and encourage walking, encourage biking. They find a positive in a lot of different areas.
And it's fair.
And it's fair. It is fair. So the Mass DOT Complete Streets program, I think, as I can tell, probably the only one in the country that actually developed a grant program for complete streets. But what they did, instead of just handing out money, they said, okay, well, we'd like the town to think about it and put something together that's a little more comprehensive. Don't come in with a project and want to add a sidewalk to the project, but what do you want to do as a community? And their goal is you get 351 communities doing it, all of a sudden we have a more connected and fair.
A complete
Straight, got a complete state, that's right. So again, it's to provide incentives to develop, and in the end, it's to facilitate better travel. Keith mentioned the Complete Streets policy, so that was the first level. And we're in tier 2 now, so part of their program was to provide a grant to the town to develop the tier 2 plan. You need the tier 2 plan before you can apply for implementation or construction in tier 3, but you have potentially up to $400,000 available to implement on an annual basis per community. Yes, it's competitive, it doesn't guarantee everything is coming to Littleton, but if you're ready and you're organized, then you certainly have a pretty good chance. I think I'll go past this. The Complete Street Policy covers a lot of different areas in terms of why you're doing complete streets and the process that you would follow. So in tier 2, with Mass DOT, while they were imposing sort of the planning function on the communities, they also wanted to try to keep it relatively simple. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we're not studying every street in the town, but we're focusing on certain areas. We're trying to do things quickly, using as much available information as we can in developing that plan. The process we've been using, and Jason will go through some of the results, as we're gathering and reviewing information that exists, safety screening, so we're looking at historical crash data, just to see if anything pops up that's of note. What we call a roadway windshield survey, so of the major streets that we are looking at, we're doing drive-throughs just to see its condition, its width, does it have a sidewalk? Yes, bad condition, good condition, handicap ramps at the end or not, crosswalks or not, typical width, is it able to accommodate a bicycle if that was part of the plan. And then taking all of that and wrap it into a needs assessment. Another thing that we're looking at, and we'll go through it a little later, is around certain areas. Is around an area a walkable, connected spot? Schools, key town buildings, maybe a recreation area. Can you get there other than using your car? Identifying potential actions, developing a priority process. Where is your priorities as a community in selecting your actions, and then finally having that drafted and finalizing the prioritization plan. So we'll go through this a little bit more later. I'm sure there's questions, but we'll end up, after this meeting, fairly quickly coming back with a draft prioritization plan, as we've been, the hard part was getting up to this point, I think. We'll see if
Yeah,
that was
it's been a very accelerated timetable that we were awarded the grant funds and had our, we got a notice to proceed in April, and the nominal deadline for Tier 2 is August 1st. And we would be hopeful of being able to submit a Tier 3 application later this year, so we're motivated to do it as deliberately as we can.
So the actions that we select, and we'll go through the different types, but we're looking to enhance the pedestrian bicycle movement, fill the gaps, so you may have a sidewalk and then a gap in the sidewalk, and maybe that's a spot that you want to complete, so that becomes an eligible action, and a number of other things. Tier 3 actions, once the town applies for that Tier 3 grant, the project has to be ready to go. So it's even in implementing, it's a very quick turnaround. Okay, all right. I'll answer, Jim, you had a question?
Yeah, it had to do with that different type of crosswalk. What, most of our crosswalks through the town are on MassDOT roads, and their requirements are a little different than that. So how do you juggle that?
Well, we'll have to sort of deal with that on a case by case. And as Jason probably mentioned, or we mentioned now that I'll mention it, a lot of the major roads in town are state roads. Traditionally, they've looked at the two lines crossing, and that's all they're going to approve, yet the complete street section recognizes that international or continental type style, ladder style, is a much better way to go, and that complete street section is in DOT. So, I think depending on where you are, along the state road, like if we were on section of Great Road down in the commercial area, I think we are able to probably convince them to go that higher type route.
So part of it is Mass DOT, but reaching back to the best complete streets policies in the nation in 2013, Littleton was #1, but in the top 15, also Mass DOT was, I think, #11 that year. So they've adopted a complete streets policy as well. I guess it would be a little ironic if we were to decide that the most important thing for us to do is to spend Mass DOT's money on Mass DOT's property in state road in order to achieve something, but I can't imagine.
And that's true.
If that's an important thing for us to do, I can't imagine that they'd object too much, but we'll see. They've been very nice to us. They've been very good to us on some other areas.
Yeah, no, they have. And that's, and I mean, that point that you just brought up too is, as we get into the priorities and what we select to apply, do we really apply for things that are on their road?
Right.
Or can we encourage them to do something that the town wants that fits in with the plan? But if it's an important area, there may be a geographic section where you say, I know it's a state road, but they're not going to get here for 10 years, and we need to do something. So, anyways, so...
It wouldn't be the worst thing, because this is the first time that any communities have gone through this prioritization process and then had an interface with Mass DOT. It wouldn't be the worst thing for us to come up with a prioritization plan at Tier 2 which looked at even state properties if those are important to us, like the high school is on is entrances along state property. There may be other important things to do. Those may not find their way into the town's Tier 3 application, though. We're looking to then take $400,000 worth of projects.
But we can call them
But-
out
but-
in
But
Tier 2.
from my understanding, the Tier 2 prioritization plan could certainly be a list that's a lot longer than simply the $400,000 in top priority, ready-to-go projects that we want to do. So I wouldn't be afraid for us to use the Tier 2 prioritization plan as a means of communication with Mass DOT about things that we think, Littleton thinks, Mass DOT should do on its roads. So, especially where so many of those are integral to what we're doing around here. So,
And ultimately, your package of Tier 3, you could package up, as Keith said, you may have just a large number of things on the list, and you could pull 8 or 10 or 12 of them, depending on what's ready and what's your priority and different things, and put them in, and it could be item 23, item 32,
Yeah, we may be I'll take one example that from a meeting I was at last week, that the 495 Metro West Partnership hosted, Mass DOT Secretary Stephanie Pollack, and she was advocating the use of Complete Streets program to help link transportation hubs with, with final destinations, to use it as a last mile, first mile approach. So in Littleton's case, if it's linking Littleton commuter rail station with other locations, with Littleton Common, with wherever else, many of those routes would involve state roads. So if we say, gee, it would be important to have a designated bike lane or bike path or something that help people get from the transportation hubs to their final destination, that could be a combination of town roads and state roads, so.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason, who will go through some of our findings in the safety analysis and road survey, and then Isabel will summarize things at the end, and then we'll, as I say, get into conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, so as Bill mentioned, I'm Jason. Bill just went over the prioritization plan kind of as a whole, some general aspects of it. I'll go into the specifics of the work we've been doing on that plan pertaining to Littleton, where we are in our development of that plan up to this stage, the work we've done, and where we hope on getting in the future and after tonight as well. So to start our development of the prioritization plan, we first did a safety data analysis or a safety screening. The way we did this safety data analysis was we took the most recent 3-year available period from the Mass DOT crash record system. Right now that happens to be the years 2011 to 2013. These Mass DOT has spreadsheets of all the crashes that occurred in the towns during these years. We reviewed those spreadsheets. Any spots that were experiencing crashes, more than 5 crashes per year, were identified as what we called hotspots. So those were taken into consideration here, as well as any crashes involving pedestrian or bicyclists within that 3-year period.
And we also see
Littleton-
them on the map here, do you?
Right, so as Isabel just pointed out, they're also shown on this map here. They're probably pretty tough to see, but feel free to come up and view them later in the evening. Here we have 2 bike crash locations in blue. And hotspot locations are the green circles here, and then the pedestrian crash is the pink circle on the map here. So the pedestrian crash was at Kimball Street and the intersection with King Street. And then the 2 bicycle crashes were pretty close to the town common area. One was actually right at the intersection of Goldsmith Stevens Street and King Street. Then the other was near the post office on Jennifer Street in the intersection with King Street. And those were the only three crashes in the most recent 3-year available period involving pedestrians and bikes. So after the safety data analysis, we conducted what we call a windshield survey. Bill mentioned this briefly in his presentation. Basically what we did was we identified roadways within the town that we felt were of a high priority or worth going to see what was available, what the existing conditions were pertaining to pedestrian accommodation, bicycle accommodation, the roadway widths, the roadway pavement conditions, if the roadway was wide enough to accommodate bikes, the sidewalk conditions, whether there was curb ramps at the transitions from the sidewalk to the pavement, at the driveways on the roadway, whether there were detectable warning panels present on those curb ramps. So we looked at all of that, and as you can see on the right corner of the slide here, those the streets marked in green were the streets that we analyzed and completed surveys of, and they're also listed below that figure there. And these roadways were identified basically first by functional classification, whether they're classified by Mass DOT as a collector road or above, which includes minor arterials, major arterials. And in addition to that, we also looked at locations of public buildings, schools, parks, recreational facilities. Any streets leading to those were also included in our windshield surveys.
And are those marked on that map?
They are not marked on this map here. They are marked on this map here. The streets highlighted in yellow on this map here. So all the streets highlighted in yellow are the streets that we conducted the surveys on throughout the town. And basically what these surveys, how these were conducted, we had 2 people go on these surveys, one driving, and then obviously the driver can't take notes while he's driving, so we would have the passenger take notes. The driver would take in, analyze the roadway, see anything that jumped out on him, but mainly it was the passenger identifying any of the things I just mentioned, what we were looking for, and we created segment forms and intersection forms. So there was a form for roadway segments, basically just checking off all the things that I just mentioned we're looking for, what's available for lighting on the roadway, if there are pedestrians traveling on the roadway, bicyclists traveling on the roadway during the time.
I remember the day you told us you were doing it so we could tell the police which roads it was in case anyone said, hey, there's someone driving slowly.
Because periodically they would stop just to take measurements or pictures.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and that was particularly when we would stop at any mid-block crosswalks along the roadway, which, like Keith mentioned, or like Jimmy mentioned, basically on the Mass DOT roads, King Street and Great Road. And we would get out, observe if there were handicap accessible ramps, detectable warning panels, warning signage, what was there at the crossing, as well as any crossings at unsignalized intersections. And we did do 4 signalized intersections within the town. Those were the intersection of Great Road and King Street and Air Road, Great Road and Powers Road, and Great Road and Russell Street and Constitution Ave. So in addition to doing the windshield survey and reviewing the crash data, we also were taking into account background documents, and included in those documents were any plans available for roadway improvements and roadway construction that's going on. We did identify a few that we currently are currently in construction that we have designed or are in future, are planned to be reconstructed in the future. One of those was just recently constructed was Harvard Road, which we designed. What we did here to incorporate Complete Streets design aspects was we actually narrowed down the travel lanes in order to provide a 3-foot striped shoulder on each in each direction here. And so this was to accommodate bicycles, the main aspect. As you can see, we also installed share the road signs for pedestrians and bicyclists, which can be seen on the top right picture there. And that was just taken during our windshield survey in last month. And then another project that we are also designing that's going to be reconstructed in the future is Nacog Hill Road. To incorporate complete streets design aspects on this road, we're improving roadway geometry to improve some sight distance problems at certain intersections with driveways and side streets. And we're also installing share the road signs on this road like we did on Harvard Road. And we're also providing sharrows, they're called. Those are the pavement markings on the bottom picture there, the bicycle with the 2 arrows above it. Those will be installed in the travel lane just to...
They're not flashing yellow, are they?
No. Just white pavement markings to alert the drivers that bicyclists could be sharing the road with them. And 2 more projects that we have designed. One that's currently under construction now is New Estate Road. This is to build a 5-foot sidewalk along New Estate Road. In order, I think the main reason is for the high school there to provide a sidewalk connection for kids to travel on New Estate Road to the high school. This will be done in 2 cross sections. One includes a 3-foot grass buffer between the road, the pavement edge, and the sidewalk, and then 10-foot travel lanes and 1-foot shoulders, which are unmarked in each direction. And then another future construction job that Green has also designed is the proposed sidewalk construction on Russell Street. This will be, the project limits are from Delaney Drive to Great Road, constructing a sidewalk on the east side of Russell Street. This will tie into the existing sidewalk on Russell Street and will connect to Great Road and be accommodated by the signal there at the intersection of Russell Street and Great Road and Constitution Ave. So after the windshield surveys, we kind of compiled all our data, sorted through it, summarized everything, and identified needs of improvement. And what we see here is the Littleton Common area. That's shown on the slide on the right there. A few things that we've noticed about here is the wide crossing on the southwest side of the picture there, across King Street at the intersection of Goldsmith Street and Stevens Street. That's currently a 75-foot crossing. It's pretty wide open there. There's poor driveway recognition, no bicycle accommodation, pretty insufficient pedestrian warning signage available for drivers to warn them. I think there's 1 pedestrian warning sign facing
Even as a
westbound
driver
traffic.
going into that intersection, it's just sort of scares yourself
Yeah.
and just move into it.
There's traffic coming from about 7 different directions.
Right.
so
Yeah,
that's
there's
why-
a
Even
lot
though
of
it's,
driveways
they
there.
just come out of nowhere.
Right,
Yeah.
now the driveway.
So, and that's where one of the pedestrian, bicycle crashes occurred, was right at that intersection on Stevens Street there. So that was an area of concern there. In addition to that, like we said, there's no bicycle accommodation throughout the common, no bicycle racks, no bicycle storage areas, no bicycle lanes. In addition to that, the curb ramps at the intersections. There are curb ramps on Goldsmith Street. Other than that, the 5-way intersection there between Stevens Street, Great Road, and Meeting House Road, and Adams Street, there's no detectable warning panels present. The curb ramps are in pretty rough shape. As I'll highlight later, one of the crosswalks doesn't even lead really to a curb ramp. And in addition, the curb ramps at the signalized intersection of King Street and Great Road are in pretty rough shape. They're steep, not located in near vicinities to the pedestrian push buttons to actuate the pedestrian signal there. So
This is
there's-
a scary area for a sighted person, and we have a blind person who lives in that area.
Yeah, so there's a definitely a need there for some
This is
detectable-
one of the challenges here. We have Stevens Street, Goldsmith, that are town-owned, and everything else is,
Right.
or Meeting House, too. Everything else is state roads.
Technically, Stevens is state as well.
Is it?
See, and this may get you into that decision process
Yes.
of, I know it's a
Yes.
state road, but maybe this is a very important thing
Yeah.
where we can define a curve.
If we brought certain amenities because we felt they were very high priority,
Yeah.
there would be an opportunity to do that.
So also in this photograph are a couple of the areas that really are wide open, even though they're off-street parking, but it's a wide open entry into areas and no sidewalk at all.
Okay. In addition, we also identified Foster Street as a need for improvement there. As you all probably know, the Littleton and I-495 commuter rail station is located on the southern end of Foster Street. In addition to this need or want for pedestrian and bicycle accommodation due to the commuter rail station, it was also identified by a study done in January of this year. It's called the street scan study. Basically, they have these sensors that they go around and they scan all of the streets in the town, and they assess the pavement condition and identify streets that are of high priority for roadway reconstruction and rehabilitation based on their pavement condition. And Foster Street was identified as the #1 priority due to its poor pavement condition by the street scan study. In addition to the poor pavement condition, there's currently no pedestrian or bicycle accommodation south of Tahatawan Road. There's a existing sidewalk on the west side of Foster Street, but that terminates at the T intersection of the Tahatawan Road. And south of there, it's striped as a single yellow center line, 10-foot travel lanes, no shoulders, and no bicycle or pedestrian accommodation. And in addition to the 10-foot travel lanes and no shoulders or signage or markings, the roadway pavement, as I mentioned, is in poor condition. That obviously further hinders the pedestrian and bicycle safety, travel safety along that roadway. Taylor Street as well, this provides access to Foster Street, and it's also directly off of Route 2. There's a sidewalk along the northern segment of Taylor Street, and then there's a gap between that sidewalk, and then there's a sidewalk just on the Route 2 bridge overpass. The sidewalk is just on the overpass and then ends, and doesn't really connect to anything. There's a gap, like I said, between the existing sidewalk on the northern side, and there's no connection between Taylor Street as far as bicyclists or pedestrians to Foster Street. And this is Gray Road here. This is, like we've mentioned before, Mass DOT, under Mass DOT jurisdiction. However, this was identified as a potential area of concern. As you can see, this is the commercialized section of Great Road here. There's a lot of banks. There's a big shopping plaza there with a supermarket, a Toyota dealership, highly commercialized area here. And as you can, it might be a little tough to see in the photo there, but there's a crossing in the Littleton Common area at the intersection with Adams Street and Stevens Street and Meeting House Road. And then there's no other crossings along that segment up until the Acton Toyota dealership. And there's many banks and, like we said, shopping plaza there where pedestrians could be crossing. In addition to the no crossings in that segment, for the majority of this segment, there's only a sidewalk on the southern end of Great Road there. So that could be a potential.
And even further on up, if you keep heading towards Acton on the the south side, yeah, I was going to say from that standpoint, this side of the road, that the sidewalk becomes even more and more difficult to find.
It actually, yeah,
You
it
need to
actually ends.
send an archaeologist out there. But we have identified that the sort of reclaiming that sidewalk is an important thing that we want to do.
Yeah, in the Toyota dealership, they did provide a sidewalk along the frontage of it, so the north sidewalk does pick back up at the start of the frontage of the dealership, but they both, the southern and the northern sidewalk both end right past the dealership.
Yeah, I mean, there's a portion of Cooper Farm property that the town is going to acquire and to continue a sidewalk from Littleton Common, an observable sidewalk from the Common all the way to that property would be an important thing, an important goal for the town.
Yeah, and then on the north side, it's very inconsistent.
Yeah.
Portion of it has a little sidewalk, some of it doesn't. Handicap ramps on both sides are really inconsistent.
You have no crosswalks in this area, and I think it might have been Jim that told me years ago that we couldn't put one in because a crosswalk has to connect two things together. And I know the business association in town that's newly formed, this is one of the things they want to bring to the town, is that we have many businesses along there that want to cross over to go to the other side, and you take your life in your hands by crossing. But I don't know whether we can solve that problem because it's a state road, but it's something
Well,
that should be.
I think now is our opportunity to put a solution on, to put our preferred solution on the table. Great.
Okay, in addition to that segment, on the segment east, the Great Road segment east of that area, in the 2002 Littleton Master Plan, it was identified as interest to put a bike path along that road in order to allow residents living in the town's southeastern areas a connection and safer access to the town common area. This roadway, a typical section, consists of 11.5-foot travel lanes with 3-foot shoulders. There's no sidewalks, no signage for bikes or markings for bikes. And the highest travel speeds along this segment, I believe it's 45 mph posted speed limit. In addition to the no sidewalks or bike lanes or pavement markings or signage, those can result in some pretty unsafe travel conditions for pedestrians and bicyclists along that segment of Great Road there. And here, I've already touched on this when we mentioned the Littleton Common area. This is the signalized intersection between King Street and Great Road, routes 2A, 110 and 119. Here, all the curb ramps are in pretty rough shape. As you can see, the concrete is kind of withering away, cracking. The curb ramps are steep. They're far distances away from the pedestrian push buttons to actuate the exclusive pedestrian signal phase at the intersection there. And there's no bicycle accommodation at the intersection as well.
Those ramps were put in the early 80s.
Yeah.
When they reconstructed the common, and that ramp happens to be broken because it's such a tight intersection that the trucks drive over that all the time. That's why it's all broken.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so those were identified as issues at that intersection there. Here is crossing across King Street from Rogers Street to the Castle in the Trees playground and the park. That was actually just renovated by Green International. They redid the basketball courts there and some landscaping there. Here, there's no detectable warning panels installed at the curb ramps here. The pedestrian signage is out of date and is also not consistent. The advanced pedestrian warning signs do not have ahead plaques, which some don't, but this could also cause confusion as to where the pedestrian crossing location actually is. Is it there? Is it ahead? There's no real guidance there.
Wasn't that a pedestrian fatality, but outside of the 3-year look back?
Yeah, but that was installed, I believe, because of the fatality. The other crosswalk was further up past the historical building, which got removed and put here, and that was the design of the time, to put the little safe island in the middle, and the detectable warning panels weren't required at that point.
Okay, and here is the intersection of Russell Street and King Street. This was identified. There's 2 schools located on Russell Street. The elementary, Russell Street Elementary, as well as the middle school there. And there's a sidewalk along the northern side of King Street, which, as we know, is a major roadway and a major travel route in the town. The curb ramps are in poor shape. It might be tough to see the picture on the lower left there. There's a huge pothole between the transition from the sidewalk to the pavement surface there. There's also no crossing available on that roadway. And if you're traveling on the northern sidewalk on King Street, if you want to get to the sidewalk on Russell Street, which is on the east side of Russell Street, there's no crossing, no signage or crosswalk markings there for you to do so. So in addition to the poor ramps, no detectable warning panels, trip hazards in the ramps and crosswalk markings, this could be a potential room, there's definitely room for improvement for pedestrians.
Yeah, this has been one, we've met with the neighbors a number of times, that there's a real need for some traffic calming techniques here. I mean, calming, that it's, as you've said, there are 2 schools on this street, but a lot of vehicles seem to be in a mad dash to get to the school, which means that particular intersection from King Street onto Russell gets an awful lot of traffic making, quick turns, and it's been a priority to try to figure out how to make that a safer intersection for the residents as well as for the users.
Just to be clear, it's not a pothole in the road, it's from the cars driving off the road and primarily the buses that create the hole.
Right,
It's
yeah, it's
beyond the
actually
curb.
on the.
It's beyond the curb.
right there, yeah.
It's been filled in, but every single street on that side going up, there's no crosswalks on any other streets
Yeah.
going up.
And here we identified King Street sidewalk, just as we were saying, the sidewalk on the north side of King Street. Once you get west of the Castle in the Trees playground and that park there, the sidewalk is in pretty poor condition. Once you turn from concrete to asphalt, it gets pretty narrow. In some spots, the asphalt is kind of deteriorating, causing some potholes or some holes in the sidewalk, which could be potential trip hazards. There's few detectable warning panels present along that stretch at the locations where transfers to the driveway surfaces. And as Jimmy just mentioned, there's really no crossings at the side streets there along that segment. And basically some general things. This is actually King Street as well. Going westbound, approaching the Littleton High School entrance. The MUTCD states that if you're both the reflective yellow and lime green signs, as you can see there, as well as the yellow signs, are both compliant with the MUTCD and accepted. However, if you're going to you should use one or the other and be consistent with it throughout a roadway corridor. As you can see here, just approaching this crossing, there's use of both signage here. There's also no ahead plaques or any guidance really to where the crossing is. There is adequate pedestrian warning at the crossing there. However, there is a school crossing as well as a pedestrian crossing, both installed at the intersection, which is a little bit redundant and probably not needed. The pedestrian crossing sign there could probably be removed. But those were some and that was the inconsistent use of the pedestrian warning signage was a general thing that was noticed along pretty much King Street and Great Road, the few crossings that are on Great Road.
Can you go back to the warning strips for a second? That you said there was no detectable warning strips at the driveway entrances. I didn't think they were required at driveways, only at road intersections.
They are, I believe, for commercialized driveways, aren't you? Is it?
I believe so, but
At commercial ones?
I believe for driveways on businesses and commercialized.
Okay. So
land.
just not for
Like
residents?
Not for resident.
You're talking like along Great Road, for example.
Okay, and like we've touched about, so I'll just slide through this slide briefly. The lack of detectable warning panels. On the top right, you can see a Bank of America entrance. There's no detectable warning panels at the curb ramps there. On the left is Russell Street. We've already touched on that. There on the bottom left is the middle school entrance on Russell Street. And there on the bottom right is the pond side at Littleton Apartments entrance on off of King Street. And some curb ramp deficiencies. On the top left, you can see that's the path leading through the Littleton Common grass area there that's standing on King Street right in front of the Littleton Sub Shop. There's no curb ramp there to get you from the roadway to the pathway. On the top right, that's the corner of Adams Street and Stevens Street there. The crosswalk, there is a curb ramp on the end of the turn of the curb there, but the crosswalk doesn't lead you to it, it leads you to the curb. And then we've already touched on the curb ramps at King Street and Great Road intersection there. And then lastly, some lack of bike racks in some key locations where they could be needed. The picture on the left was actually just taken today. I came down, there was a bike path walked to the hand railing there. That's also right in front of the Littleton sub shop. There could be some use for, obviously, some bicycle storage there, as well as here, that's also the corner on the top right of, that's the corner of Stevens Street and Adams Street there. There's a wide sidewalk buffer there, a brick sidewalk buffer there. That could be a nice spot for a bike rack, plenty of room there. Won't impede on the sidewalk. So that's an area where a bike rack could potentially be implemented and installed. Here at the basketball courts at the Castle in the Trees playground, I was just there today, and there's probably a pickup game of 10 plus kids there playing. If those kids want to ride their bikes there, I'm guessing most of them are local, and they want to ride their bikes there and they want to lock them up or at least put them in bike racks, there's no place for them to do so, and there's adequate space around the area for some bike racks to be installed. And then the shopping, the commercialized area on Great Road, there's no bike racks within the shopping plaza or at any of the commercial businesses along that stretch. Some bike racks could be installed along that section to accommodate some and increase the bicycle traffic around there. And I think that's it. Oh, nope, we got one more. The Two Brothers Trail. This is access off of King Street here. It's right across from a church. There's really no wayfinding signage to identify people of this trail other than the one sign you see running parallel to King Street, so drivers more than likely aren't going to notice it. And pedestrians really aren't either unless you're aware of the trail. It starts out on the top right as a pretty well-groomed trail, and then as you get further down, it's pretty overgrown. Some trees impeding the path, as well as overgrown grass. And I know the town in their open space and recreation plan has expressed some interest in kind of revitalizing the trails around the area and connecting some trails to the recreation areas. So this could be a potential for that. And then a quick summary here. So some common types of issues and needs we... Oh, she's going to take the All right, so I'll hand it off to Isabel. She'll go through some.
Great, thanks so much, great stuff.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jason. So I know you heard a lot of information at this point, and we dived into the survey and looked at what needs are available. I would like to break it or go to a level higher and remind ourselves about the goal of tonight, and the goal is to actually identify priorities that would be doable and could be brought forward within the short time frame that has been identified, so potentially within the summer to identify projects that could be brought forward and could become complete streets projects. And so what we have identified are some needs, and we've talked about sidewalk deficiencies, crosswalks that are missing. We talked about streets and curbs, ramps not meeting ADA compliance. And it's also about crosswalks there or not there. And I also wanted to, and bicycle accommodation obviously as well. And I wanted to get your attention once more to this map, because we looked at essentially going back to the complete streets policy. There were identified the need or the want to link projects to parks, to, and that's why we looked at parks here at Milton Common, for example, to T-stations, to connectivity, to enhance multimodal transportivity. And then as well, so we had parks, schools definitely, and public buildings. And so what you can see here on the map are, with the red triangle, are the schools, and we have also public facilities on the map as well. And what you see here as the circles, that is a focus area around those areas, and within a half a mile travel distance, how people could get there without their car. So, and that's why we looked at those areas very closely and thought, okay, what is available there? Are there sidewalks available? Are there bike passes? Are there crosswalks or not? In what conditions are the sidewalks? How are the ramps? And yeah, bike racks, yes or no. So the whole list we went through, Jason has presented, and that broken down to the focus areas that we just, from reviewing the complete streets policy, but that we thought would be valuable bringing forward. But this would lead us into the discussion, because we have identified a lot of projects. Some of them were identified as priority areas before in the scan study. And some have already, you all nodded your heads and said, well, these are definitely areas that would need some improvement. So we have a long list already of things identified. And so the next step would really be to prioritize those elements, those lists, and see what does the public think, how we could best move forward. And as Keith already mentioned, we are aware that there are a lot of projects out there. There are a lot of things that could be done, and so not all of this can probably be done with the grant money that is available now in the short time. But what we would suggest is just have a list, have a very comprehensive list, and then prioritize what is worthwhile bringing forward and moving forward to this.
I'd agree with that approach, that I think if our Tier 2 prioritization plan can be sort of the universe of things that we would like to see done eventually, and then from that prioritize those specific things that we can actually get done in a Tier 3 implementation application. I'll just use one example that has been at the top of our list of things to do, and that is the sidewalk on Russell Street, for which we have a commitment of $65,000 from the developer of the Point to contribute towards that project. However, and which Green is designing for us, but based on, let's say, the most recent project cost that I saw of $180,000 for that sidewalk, and if we can apply for a $400,000 grant, 180 minus 65 equals some number.
115.
Somebody number. Thank you. And so you start with that and have that, build that in to a $400,000 project. So I think that because of, it's the closest that if it's got to be a shovel ready project or ready to go, well, that one's ready to go. You've got
Well, and we have 3 members of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee here tonight, and they've been working on identifying locations for bicycle racks and working with MAPC, who has a Group I program for bicycle racks, and identifying what would be the best racks to use that would be sturdy. And I've talked to Jimmy about installation and all of that. That's another ready-to-go project.
Now, so a couple of things, I'm going to throw some questions out. One is, so that MAPC, they're helping you decide the type of rack, or are they a funding program Are they gonna use another
They're just a
program?
bulk purchaser. as far as
They
I know.
just
Yeah.
negotiated a price, so they have, I believe, 3 manufacturers,
Yeah.
and you get to pick the
It's just like
rack
picking
style.
off a state bid
Yeah.
list.
Okay,
That's just a
so,
procurement.
so then the question
But
would be,
they're the
is
funding
can we
sources.
use
Yeah.
the Complete Streets money for that, or is that a different funding
Right.
source?
Right.
So that would be one.
Yeah, because
So-
the MAPC doesn't come with funding.
No.
No.
It's that they are, it's like in MAPC.
They give us the
We could,
vetting.
we could purchase a fire vehicle through
Okay.
MAPC.
Right.
That they just do the bidding. So they've done so MAPC is doing the bidding for bike racks, but then it's still up to the community to come up with the funding, so if.
That pays MAPC back for the rack, or?
No, we buy it
No.
ourselves. They just
They
do bulk.
they just vet the manufacturer,
Yeah.
they've done all the preliminary work of identifying suppliers that have good products.
Okay, so my question would be is, where and how many bike racks have you identified? You know, do you have, are you set, or are you still in process? And is there something we can do to nail them down with you over the next 2 to 3 weeks?
So we,
Easily in 2 to 3
Yeah.
weeks, because we're like this close to it.
yeah, so we.
It's all a question of money.
We've
Yeah, we-
identified racks, we've identified locations, we've spoken to many of the stakeholders, yeah.
Perfect, okay, and it's written down somewhere, or
Mm-hmm.
we just, okay.
And you've got some of them, you showed us some of the
Yeah.
locations that we've been talking about, 300 King Street.
Okay.
And just to give
Long
credit
Way.
credit where credit is due, one of the reasons we have a complete streets policy in Littleton is that we had our bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee in place from a grant that had been provided to us by MAPC. And MAPC came back to the committee and said, would you be interested in a complete streets policy? And we were, the committee's still going strong.
Good. And we talked a little bit about the one trail, the piece of.
It's a little bit out of date, there's been some changes to it, but that's it.
Okay, good. The trail, so is there either the Two Brothers Trail?
Two brothers.
Are there goals or plans to do something different to that, or extend that, or plans, goals for other
Oh, we'd
trails?
love to have some trails. We recognize the difficulty of trying to move on the current streets and highways that we have with bicycles and/or pedestrians. We'd love to have some off-road.
Yeah, I don't know if
Destination.
I don't know if those are ready to go.
Yeah, I don't think there's any, I don't think
Yeah.
anybody has.
But
any
nothing's
plans.
been identified yet, either by committee or the open space plan or my next question was dealing with the master plan. I know it's underway, but.
One thing we could do with trails would be to do a gap analysis.
Well, and I think we need to build on what the Trails Committee has done recently in Rick Finley's work.
Yeah, and look at where the gaps are and see what the obstacles are to connecting those gaps.
Or the gaps between where and where.
Trails,
Well,
there are bits and pieces of trails.
existing
Businesses
trails,
of other trails besides.
There's what, trails in Bumblebee Park, I believe, right? There's a couple trails in there.
Which is strategically close to the train station.
So would you be able to share that information too about the other trails and about the
I'm
gaps
looking
that
at
have
Karen now for
been?
that.
well,
We could, or with
Yeah.
Rick.
We've been getting a lot of information of what is available on the GIS. Not everything is available, so we've been sort of finding out something, looking at it and trying to, okay, maybe it's over here, but so
Yeah,
whatever.
I think it would be worth our putting you in contact with the folks that do have the information and could connect the dots on this.
because they have,
And then we can look and see if there's enough there to go forward now, or if it has to be the list. Because my approach to this Complete Streets funding is that this year, we're going to go for 400,000, but I would expect that we will go for some amount of money when when the program continues the following year. So we don't need to get it all done now. I very much want to make sure that we grab $400,000 this year by having projects ready to go. But I'm very impressed with the planning work that I've seen here, and it's more you're connecting the dots for us, that is providing a framework for us to make decisions, and that's really, that's great. It's just great.
And just building on that, Keith, is my understanding, and it's not set in DOT's program
Yeah.
yet, but they do envision, let's say, okay, Littleton has the policy now, they're putting their plan together, and all the communities that do that, DOT, I think, in their head, they're thinking, well, probably in 4 or 5 years, we may ask the towns, not only show us what you've done,
Yeah.
but update your plan. Are there other things to do?
Right,
too? So
right.
they do.
Yeah, and frankly, I think having this prioritization plan in place, and that we are looking at, as you well know, that we have our roadway improvement plan that we review and update, and then we take on projects, mostly big projects, but we're looking at projects big and small, that those become opportunities for us to put the complete streets principles into practice. So it's helpful to have this priority list that can, be another factor as we're choosing which projects we undertake with our own money.
What about any feedback on sort of the quote high priority areas like that we did talk about, the town common area, the Great Road area?
I want to put out could I, go ahead, you go.
Just speaking for a little bit from the perspective of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, some of the things that come up over and over are King Street is impossible to walk along, that you have to cross King Street multiple times in order to traverse the length. We've talked about the condition of the sidewalks. Another thing that comes up very often is the speed of traffic in town is very high. So we talked a little bit about the intersection with Russell Street. Right now we have a real problem with kids walking from the middle school over to the Starbucks at the Point. There's no sidewalk there. Traffic moves very fast along that road. It's a problem. But there's already a project identified there. But in a bunch of the neighborhoods as well, like traffic calming, we talk about improved sightlines, but the problem with improved sightlines is it tends to increase traffic speed because people feel more comfortable going fast. So finding some balance there in order to keep traffic at a reasonable speed is another big thing that we talk about over and over. And then even the sidewalks that do exist and the sidewalks that have signage, like the one down by the high school, cars are so unused to seeing pedestrians in those crosswalks that even when there is a pedestrian, there is the signage, they don't see it. And that road, that's kind of the 495 bypass. Whenever there's traffic on 495, traffic on that road gets very heavy. And people don't see the pedestrians in the sidewalk. The same thing with this one up at Two Brothers that doesn't have any signage. So having something that can alert drivers to the fact that there is a pedestrian in the crosswalk can improve things substantially, in addition to just making sure that we have adequate crosswalks. And then we talked about the common and the fact that it's kind of ironic that the common is pedestrian inaccessible. It's really hard for pedestrians to get to the common. It's a frightening intersection for drivers, never mind pedestrians.
Okay, so you said, and I fully agree with you, but does the town have a goal? I know that it's probably too early in the master plan piece, but, like now's not that we have to have everything figured out, and there may be some things in the town center or the town common area that we can do quickly to fit in with the timing of a tier 3, let's say. There may be other things that you want to do to extend the curb or, close the road a little bit, but it's going to take a little engineering. It's not going to be ready for July 15th or September 15th this year. It can be ready for next year.
What about the installation of some signs like they have down at the Kimball's Ice Cream Place, the flashing signs
That's what I was
at
thinking.
some of these
Those
hotspots?
I was going to mention that when he was talking about.
So, we talked
And
about
we've got
Great
these
Road.
hotspots on King Street that are really problems.
People slow down.
So, so what we've done is we've looked at a lot of different areas. I guess what would be good for us to get confirmation of is those most critical, and I mean, you guys are out here every day, and you know, the most critical locations where those types of applications we can do. I mean, I know, down by the castle on the trees, I got that right? I was going to say Castle in the
Castle in the
Sky.
Yeah, when you were showing us the slides, I was thinking, wow, you should put a Kimball's type,
Yeah,
track.
so the crossing there,
Crossing,
and
yeah.
then you go down.
How about across from the library and trying to get across to the
Yes.
cafe
Right,
and the funeral parlor?
So, I mean, you look at some things, and that's why we zeroed in around some areas to say, okay, I mean, you know, a library, playground, there's a
Up by the high
playground
school.
on, is it Roger Street, with the playground? So there's a sidewalk that runs along one side, Rogers with a big green area, big playground, park.
It's on
Faith Park?
Foster Street, yeah.
Faith Park?
Right by
And
Yeah,
no
fire
cross,
station.
no crosswalk or crossing identified where, you know, someone would.
Parks on one side and the sidewalks on the
Sidewalks
other.
on, yeah, and so it's okay, because there's residential uses over there, but then if you're gonna encourage anyone walking down and getting across, why not identify? And with more and more people using the T or going down in that direction, you identify.
Let's make a point as a, because they're not here tonight, but I think it would be helpful if we're going to have a follow-up discussion with the trails folks. I think we ought to have a follow-up discussion with the school administration, just to make sure that this opportunity to, you know, if there's a solution that we can use this funding source to do, we ought to make sure that we're including.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Including the
I have that
schools.
on my
Yeah.
list
Yeah.
of.
I don't want to speak for them, I don't want
Yeah.
to say, gee, this is a great solution.
Right.
But I know that they're intimately involved with the problems there, and I'd love to have them
Yeah, no,
be able to solve them.
that would be great, because we don't even know really, they may have even plans of what
Yeah.
they're doing, some things to address, so it'd be good for us to know.
Yeah. And so in general, there are two solutions to this, I would say. So, I mean, prioritize what we have so far
Yeah.
and go back to what the
I wanna-
needs
I
we
wanna
have
put-
identified.
I wanna
And another
put-
solution
yeah.
would be to look at areas, like, for example, just pick the area around the
Yeah.
Littleton Common and say, well, this is one real priority area we want to fix.
Yeah.
And how can we make it better? How
Right,
can
so
we
there
make
may be
it
20
more
things-
accessible
20
and
things to do
focus
with
on
town.
that one area
Yeah.
other than all over town? So
So
various
as- yeah,
approaches.
As we look at prioritizing, you have safety considerations, you have the areas, you have connectivity.
The linkage to the T would be another aspect.
Yeah, I was, that's the point I wanted to mention, and I didn't know, because whether there would be something that could be done, even if it's just painting the pavement, from the T station, the commuter rail station, into Littleton Common, whether there's something that could be done to.
And the
Begin to-
Trails Group has identified, not on Foster Street, but going through the back properties.
Yeah.
A connection, a series of rights-of-way that could be strung together to form a path. It would be more of a walking path to get access between that and up to the Long Lake area.
Yeah.
But improving the road would be huge.
Yeah, because I'm thinking that, and selfishly, I'm just trying to plan for when I'm going to bike to work sometime this summer, although I'm going to bike to West Concord Station, I'm going to take the train to Littleton and then bike the rest of the way in. I know how treacherous it is in Concord, from firsthand experience, and I can just see how treacherous it is for Littleton.
Yeah.
But we do have IBMers who commute in from the city and take their bike off at Littleton Station and
They do.
bike to Littleton Common.
We have
Yeah.
guys that go the other
Foster
way.
Street
Yeah.
every day. I bike to the commuter rail station
Yeah, I
every
mean, what
day. It's
about-
terrifying.
Money for just putting the sharrows down. I mean, like, you
Yeah.
can't
That's
walk
what
a
I
little bit
was
as
gonna
a
mention,
stopgap,
sharrows
like
or
putting
bike
putting
signs.
that type
So,
of
yeah,
stuff down.
markings are an eligible item. Can you hear?
Yeah.
These are just ideas, things that DOT put in their program as eligible items. The markings are, and we don't know, keep in mind, this is a brand new program. DOT doesn't have everything figured out. They fund you to do some markings. Well, you're gonna have to keep them up. You know,
Sure,
so-
yeah.
But Foster Street might be, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Cross Street's on the list for,
What's at the
part of
top of the
capital
list for
program?
reconstruction?
It's on
It
the,
is part of the
It's on
capital.
the-
It's on street scans list.
it's on the street scan.
It's on the street
We haven't
scan.
adopted it
Okay.
yet
All right,
for
so-
ours, but it's,
So we were talking about, and I know most of the roads don't fit this, but we were talking about, well, what do we really need to do to have some striping that makes some sense and still accommodate cars? And you're probably at the least that you probably want to go is like a 10-foot travel lane, and probably, if you can get at least a 4-foot shoulder, then that gives the biker a fair amount of room to, but that total ends up being 28 feet. So, I don't know, we haven't assessed really all of them are going, do we have any at 28 feet? But as you go into reconstruction, maybe, no, there's no.
Well,
He's not
well,
saying
because
he's-
we also have scenic roads,
Yeah,
so, you know,
so you,
you're gonna be hugely into the trees, so where's that's where we've had that fine line of
Right.
when reconstructing the roads.
right,
You know, where you can put a sidewalk, you can do
Yeah,
it, but
right.
what's the environmental
so then it
impact?
may end up being that, I mean, that would be a link that would be nice to improve the comfortability, doesn't work, safety from the train station into town.
But-
That's where we come up with the
Was,
idea of going
Maycog
overland
Hill Road,
because
that's a
of going on the
scenic road.
road
What's
isn't
that?
gonna work.
Maycog Hill Road, that's a scenic road, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like we did on the
So that's
reconstruction
shallow.
there, we did the sharrows and installed the share the road signs. there.
Yeah, and we're removing 5 trees.
And what we get from, I mean, some of the biker industry has come to the conclusion that the showers don't necessarily help them that much. They'd rather have a little bit more width. But, I mean, that may end up being the option that you have to do.
We'll see.
I do think that the bicycle signs do start to put in people's heads that, oh my God, there might be a bicycle on this road. Not necessarily Cheryl's, but the upright
Right,
signs.
For a minute.
Right, yeah, well, and then there might be like those high
That minute
tech.
might be all you need, though.
And what about those speed things?
Yes.
Your speed is,
Speed display
you like
signs
signs?
Those are
are.
about $10,000 a
So
piece.
I was gonna
But
say,
they're-
eligible.
yeah, but Jim, they're an eligible item.
they're eligible.
And part of this program. So you get a solar powered speed display on, again, maybe you pick the routes where you are thinking there could be a lot more bikers going up and down here, or where you have a critical ped crossing. You know, that might be, some options to do.
Well, again, as a person who attends enough meetings on roads, that when we tried to put those on the Show Road, there was a fair amount of opposition as well as, agreeing to put them out there, and then where are they gonna go, and then they wanted to put them every 200 feet.
Everybody's got an opinion.
So, I mean, on that, I mean, I will say, so I live on the Neshoba Road, and I believe you guys redesigned it, it was Green International that did our road, so, I mean, I will say, like, since the completion, I'm not saying there aren't people who don't bond down that road, but I don't think it's as fast, and I don't know if it's the striping and the fact that it looks narrower, or if it's the speed feedback signs, but, I mean, something helped there, I think, because people aren't going as fast as they did actually before, when it was horrible, people seem to be driving faster
Well,
down it.
Because the road's quieter and stuff, it doesn't seem as fast, but I mean, I've heard that as well on the show, but that the improvements that we did helped reduce the speed. And some of the people that were
Narrow
naysayers.
lanes are a calming technique.
So I will say, one of the big vocal, Maureen Woods, who really didn't want those, once it was in, she's like, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be.
She didn't understand how it worked, and once she understood that.
Right.
Plus your neighbor, he was concerned about.
Well,
this.
he didn't want it to see from his, right, yeah, where
but-
the placement
But
of
he's
it.
been pleased with
Yeah,
the road.
yeah. I think, yeah.
So what it comes down to, again, I would suggest from a long-term plan, that we could certainly factor in using those traffic calming techniques and figure out a way to do it. Then the more immediate question is, well, can we do one of those at a particular location and be ready to go? in time for, I mean, the earliest opportunity to submit the grant is July 15th, and the next one is September 15th. And so it's a really short time frame. And as Jim suggests, sometimes it takes a long time to figure out what, you know, so before the coast is clear, to place one of those
Well, I think the
options.
police would be a good resource to find out where their hotspots are for some of those.
It may well be at you know, that the schools are places that we ought to be doing those.
Do you know, Jim, are the signs like Kimball's has, the flashing, are those a similar price to the speed feedback signs?
They're not quite as expensive, but they're up there as well. But I mean, I know a lot of people are using those. I just talked to, I think Acton's gonna be putting some of those in.
Yeah, a lot of communities put them in. We put them in Arlington where Minuteman Trail crosses some busy streets. We put something similar to that in.
They actually have stop signs that flash now too, like that.
What's going across to Route 2A and Acton for the bike, for the
Bike
Bruce
shop.
Freeman? How are they gonna calm traffic there?
I don't know.
That's gonna be,
I
that's
heard
gonna
it.
be interesting.
I thought, are they not, I thought they were putting an overpass, no?
Really?
That's what I thought.
Is that why they're
I
doing
don't
all
know.
that clearing?
That's what I thought they were doing.
Yeah.
I could be wrong,
'Cause there's a lot
because
going
they're
on.
doing a whole lot of clearing and,
More than
and,
$400,000.
yeah.
So some of, I mean, when we start identifying projects in the plan, we need to
Climb out and carry
provide
away.
information on how long it takes, estimated time of implementation. Obviously, it has to be ready to go when you apply for that particular project. So, let's say we wanted to do some other things besides Russell Street sidewalk that needed engineering. Well, that probably wouldn't go in on a September 15th, it would go in next July 15th or next. The signs, like the speed display and the high-type crossings for the signs for the peds, you know, those can be pretty quick hit. Anything that is applied for this year has to be in by June 30th next year.
Anybody interested in benches for people to have a spot to sit down?
Well, that's, so
alongside.
that's what I was saying, like in the town common area, as an example. Let's say, you know, you wanted to, I mean, it's great with the points coming out, really nice, and it's very comfortable, but I think when that was getting approved, I mean, you still had businesses in the center area that you want to strengthen, and maybe there's a nice coffee shop there, or a pizza shop or something. So there may be some things where you want to bump out the curb, reduce the crossings, add benches, street tree. Again, it's not just calming for traffic moving, but if you can create a place where you bike, park your bike, go in, have a cup of coffee, come out and sit. I mean, I really want to do a parklet. And I know it's not Fort Littleton.
It's so
Yeah.
Somerville to
But,
the park.
but, you know, those kinds of things are grabbing hold where people do end up coming down and they just want to enjoy and hang out, you know? So that is an eligible item.
Yeah,
Those
well, I was
kinds
thinking
of
more
things.
like the elderly people, they come out of 19 Shattuck, if they were gonna try to risk their lives to go to the common, some of them might need a spot
Yeah.
along by the old burying
Yeah.
ground to just sit down and rest.
Yeah,
There is a bench there.
On that side?
Yeah, and this would tie into the idea of looking at one area and really improving it.
Yeah.
So, and if we could identify some more items at the common.
Yeah, or for
that
folks that are
covers
coming
overall.
from, because there are a lot of folks that live at the Littleton Housing Authority property, and they walk up Shattuck Street towards the common, and then where do you safely cross? to get to
Oh,
go to
that's,
the
that's
house?
the
Yeah.
big issue,
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
issue.
What about IBM? Does IBM, I mean, that's obviously a major employment spot. Are there anything that they talk to you about, boy, it'd be nice to have, or we need this, or
Well,
besides the hotel?
Well, I mean, yeah, no, put a check mark there. That they had talked about let's see, how many times you had to cross, you know, how often you have to cross the street in order to be using a sidewalk. So that the sidewalk may be on one side of the street,
I
then you
mean,
have to
you'd like
cross.
it to the hotel?
Yeah, heading up towards the point. Or at other, you know, at other places. They have a lot of people, they have a lot of employees who are who get out of the building in the middle of the day and are all over the place.
Along their frontage is pretty much a sidewalk in their northernmost drive. The sidewalk rounds, and then from there to the town line, I think it's nothing. So, and I'm just like, boy, you can't even really walk to the Chinese restaurant. Or CBS across the street has a sidewalk that I think comes down to the street, but it's curved, and then I can't remember if it actually leads you to anything.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
So
There
it's-
are people from IBM that, I have an office right in the Common. Come out of, they go down Meeting House Road, cross over, and head down to Donlands, maybe to get a salad or something. And once again, going back to crosswalk, some of those people want to go to Subway
Yeah.
along that way, but they head down that way, then they head back and go back to work.
Like King Street, there's a lot of defects on there, but, our understanding is Mass DOT has a plan to repave that road at some point, so National Grid is installing a gas main right now in anticipation of that. So I guess I'd be a little reluctant to try to put any improvements that,
They might
may
interfere.
get
They're
eaten
gonna-
up,
right, yeah.
but
but up by the Common or something,
Well-
where there's a good crossing needed.
they're supposed to go from 495 to the town line, and then possibly from the Common all the way into Acton. But, looking at those deficient curb ramps and stuff, how quick could you engineer just curb ramps and fix those? As a person who plows sidewalks, they're pretty nice to go across when they're correct. When they're not so good, they're tough to get through. Again, I know you have to go out and survey, and you gotta draw a plan up on those, but most of them are, they're all different.
They're all different, yet the same.
Yeah.
Like, here's 6 typicals, and put this one here, But, that one I would say, there's some projects, some items you can implement very quick with a spec in
Yeah.
small direction.
Maybe to ask Joe, or if the Littleton Business Association, for example, has would that be a place we could go to have a list of, if we were gonna put a project together quickly for, a crosswalk, or for some kind of flashing things that help, or for extending sidewalks in the Littleton Common area, would there be specific input, do you think, that?
You could definitely get input from that organization.
Yeah. So we'll follow up with them, we'll follow up with the trails people, the schools, and with the business association to get specific, see if we can get specific recommendations, because we'd love to be able to.
And there could be some things
To address
that
those.
you come up with some, hey, we can do these 5 things really quick and easy, they're not the ideal what we want.
Right.
But we know now,
We
through
can
this
make it
process,
better.
we're gonna make this
We can
better
make it
over the
better,
next few
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And then, again, the rumor mill is there's a building uptown that's vacant, that's supposedly got purchased with some other property and will be developed hopefully in the future, and there's a spot that could you force that developer to put the sidewalk on the opposite side of the road to, and then we'd only have to put crosswalks to accommodate that. But we don't know when or if it's coming.
Right, so, my answer to that would be is, your plan encompasses everything that you think you need or want, but then when you get down to prioritizing or submitting for tier 3 application, at that point, you might say, well, that might end up being something fundable somewhere else down the road. So
we'll
let's
do
not
that,
put that
we'll go to
in,
the
we'll
next
do
one.
these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we're doing the right approach, like coming together with ideas, and what we have here kind of mirrors also what Jason had already presented, and so the next step would then be to really rethink on your side and with other input from business organizations, schools, and other residents, what would be what would be the most priority, and what could be brought forward in the short term, in the
Yeah.
midterm, and in the long term. I
Yeah.
think
I'm wondering if there could be, even just based on the input tonight, which, I mean, from what I'm hearing, that there's and I've dealt with a lot of these groups for a long time. I'm sure that there are things that we left off the list that we haven't discussed tonight, but I will say, everything that we've talked about tonight is high priority stuff that we wanted to do. So we're in the enviable position of choosing those of the high priority items that are most ready to go. And that's why I'd say, well, we start with Russell Street, because we're sidewalk, because we're gonna need the supplemental funding, because we've only got 65. And from the, well, we could use Chapter 90 funds, but that if it easily fits into this funding application, then we look at what other pieces that we can put. And what I'd be very interested to see is to show us how from the ideas we put on the table, how close to 400,000 are we, or how over are we, or what do we have? I'm confident we have to cut. If we only have 400,000, then we can't do everything we put on the table, but show us some, give us enough information so that we can choose to put the pieces together for a $400,000 application.
Well, so there's a couple of, one, I think we can leave tonight and start outlining that plan with the ideas we've gotten and talked about. How quickly, I guess, can you end up getting talking about the school project?
Yeah, I'd say we'd have to say within the next 2 weeks
Okay.
to be able to do that.
So, then my question would be is, the Tier 3 deadlines for this year are July 15th and September 15th.
Yeah.
So we can't submit on July 28th.
Right.
It's not going to count until September 15th.
Right.
What is your thought there? I don't know, the sidewalk plan is...
That's ready to go. It just strikes me that we probably need to do enough other work that the reasonable deadline is September 15th.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Now, we won't, with the September 15th,
We'll have more competition.
we'd be done before that. So
Yeah.
in the application process, I think, that I was going to actually have you go on the portal. They're
Yeah.
supposedly uploading some information,
Mhm.
maybe on
Okay.
Tier 3. I don't know if they've done it yet. But if it's anything like the Tier 2 application, it's fairly easy
Yeah.
process. So September 15th, their approvals or decisions, you'd hear back in November. So you'd have the spring to construct the sidewalks and to be done by June 30th. In the winter to bid and select. As opposed to July 15th and hearing in September,
Yeah.
you're good. I guess it's
Still,
so September 15th,
Yeah, so if
that'd be
we-
the most extensive, and everything else, I
Yeah,
think.
if we submit on July 15th, though, then can we even can we even start a project in the fall that we're gonna, like, let's just assume for the moment that we were saying, okay, we will do Russell Street sidewalk and anything else we can have ready to go on July 15th, even if it doesn't reach 400,000.
Right.
So, just to say, could we actually then get the go-ahead and to do the Russell Street sidewalk before Jim is, closing us down
That's
with
not,
snow?
yeah, that's a fair question.
Because if not, then we might as well pick for September 15th.
Yeah,
And-
it's
And
just
do it, and spend the time to come up with our best list of $400,000 worth of projects, as well as having a really good Tier 2 list that has the universe of things. I mean, I think, I'm just, again, I'm so impressed about this planning process, and I see so much opportunity, what things that we can get out of it, that I think we ought to make the most of this time that we have together to come up with, to take the time that's needed for a stellar Tier 2 plan and put in a $400,000 worth of things to do in Tier 3 on September 15th. I think that would,
Another fantasy trail that we'd love to do is from Goldsmith Street over to Great Road, somewhere behind like Abashan, Donnellan's kind of thing. There's Kimlock, and there's some, Kimlock leads up
There's a
to, I
right of
think,
way in
a
there.
piece of open space.
Okay, so on these.
So these are
the
things that we
trail
need to
designs,
explore a little
right,
bit
so you can have them, but you can't go for an application to fund it if you have right-of-way issues
Right.
to solve, permitting issues to solve, and design issues.
But if we say 15th of
But-
September,
but
that gives us time to find out if,
True.
how much of those
well, it
issues
does,
do.
it
And I'm not
does, but
saying it
it
doesn't
doesn't
end up
give
on
us a
the
town meeting to acquire easements that we don't have.
Right, so that could be, but it still can show up on a plan if everyone's saying, yeah, we really
Yeah.
want this trail connecting these points.
Yeah.
But we just know we can't apply for that.
Right,
on-
to
for
the
another
point,
2 or 3 years.
right, the information that Pamela is suggesting will give us a better Tier 2 comprehensive
Right.
prioritization plan. Even if from that, we're not able to do some of those projects, we
But we'll know what
will.
the steps are.
We will, because it will be a document that we will refer to often, I hope, not only in this round, but in other planning things that we're doing.
Mary, can you tell us where the master plan is and what's going on? Or in anything else?
Basically, just getting started.
Just getting started.
Have a first visioning meeting, public visioning meeting next Monday. Have a transportation core assessment group tomorrow morning meeting. And that's just gathering information from
And our
stakeholders.
target is the May 2017 town meeting for presenting the master plan.
Are they hitting areas where, like we've talked about tonight, or are they?
Transportation. I'm imagining tomorrow morning's meeting will be covering some of this.
Well, the other thing too, the great thing about this prioritization plan, just as we're about to submit our recreation and open space, our plan, and we completed the housing production plan. So we've got all of these other plans that including this one, including our Tier 2 prioritization plan, which we will have done this summer. Those will all inform the master plan process. So it's the perfect time for us to be getting, highest quality information on these individual subject areas.
I think there's a lot of synergy
Yeah.
and potential for even more.
And even part of it,
Ideas
we
tomorrow.
did our elder needs assessment, and we saw how important it is that transportation, number one, is a top issue for our aging population, and the importance of having walkable places, places to live and shop and to access without a vehicle. So,
Can you
People wanna
tell
get
a
around.
little bit more about those populations, where they're located?
well, what we've identified is we need walkable areas, like, well, they're all over town for starters, but we've identified that Littleton Common is a prime, and those neighborhoods, a prime area where we would want to have more walkability for
There are two elder houses
mobility,
close to the common, 19 Shattuck and then Littleton Green, which is behind the Littleton Inn.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are both subsidized housing.
There's also a permitted 40B right in the common, although
Oh, yeah, where is that?
currently.
Why you reminded me
It's
of
behind the Toyota dealership.
developments.
Behind Toyota.
Between Robinson Road and the back of the Toyota dealership,
I
which
think
would make a perfect place for.
I think you've done a good job of finding a lot of the hot spots just by the process you went before, between the common, the public spaces, the schools, and the transportation hubs. I don't think we have anything other than those that we're looking at.
And the other big issue we have is that it's all really dispersed, because it's a town full of 1 acre zoning and single-family homes filled with seniors who at some point are not going to be able to drive anymore, but they want to age in place, they want to stay in their community, and like Keith says, they want to get around.
Well, you can see, just from looking at the map, you start to look at the older neighborhoods that are nice and sort of grid style near the center, and they're walkable to a lot of things. And then you see the newer ones that are new subdivisions
Yeah.
way out, bigger lots, and, all right.
I'm just, quickly looking down this list, but we were talking about sidewalks. If we truly can do the one on Russell Street, we could go from the existing sidewalk, the curbing is all starting to lean and the sidewalk's in bad shape, and that could just be a remove and reset curbing and put a new asphalt surface down, remove it. So we really wouldn't need any plans, you just give that detail sheet. There's probably 2,000 feet of sidewalk
That's the
there.
section continuing south?
You're talking about the King Street section?
No, Russell
No, on
Street
Russell.
from
Oh, the
Delaney
existing
Drive,
Russell Street?
come back to the school because that has granite curb
And then
on
we
it.
might be able to deal with right at the intersection.
No, it's not gonna come all the way down because there's other issues down there. Well, then this thing says pedestrian, it's asking for crosswalks. We talked about you could paint crosswalks all the way up the street. You could either call a company for thermoplastic or just paint them. I mean, that's sort of cheap money, but if you're trying to get up to 400 grand, you could do that pretty quickly, I think. Without, having to do a lot of engineering, then we could work on the speed signs or the pedestrian signs over time that could take a little longer. If they were able to get done quicker, then we could drop something else off the list.
How's the town felt about, you go into communities, you see they're not brick necessarily, but the red marked crosswalks, they use imprint or something similar to that that's more permanent, but it keeps the
Again-
color, but I don't know if the style, or the color
Again,
fits with the town.
we used to have green crosswalks with the white borders, and then because they were on the state, they didn't want the paint infill,
Yeah.
so they went back to the traditional,
They might, I mean, they
diagonals.
might approve, there's been imprint type of elements approved, or the pavement stone or something, have been approved on their projects in other spots now. I'm just thinking of getting to that 400, but also, you see like a different stuff. It might be only in certain areas, the town common or down Great Road, but maybe, it spices it up a little.
But see, that's my question about, though, if they're gonna repave the road, why would we wanna spend our money to have them dig it up? And
Yeah.
then, you're supposed to be consistent with your crosswalks, you have one type here and then a painted one here. So are we gonna do them all, or?
Well, that's what I'm saying, in an area where you're sort of making a different environment in the town common area, the commercial section of Great Road, maybe that you use a little different treatment, dressing it up more, then as you get out by the high school, then you use those high visibility markings.
Yeah, I think I could definitely see that. If you're looking first at the crosswalk at 300 King Street, and then, one or two more, and then you get up to the common, and you have those areas that are similar, have similar type of higher-end crosswalks. I think that would be very well received, once you get around the timing question.
I would think, wouldn't you think, though, that the 300 King Street would be a priority for us?
Yes.
That we would want to get that into this grant application?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, but we were just talking how you treat the crosswalk, but
Yeah.
300 King would be
Yeah.
more like probably
Oh, like your flashing light.
Yes, yeah.
All right, that's good.
Certain neighbors.
You got any,
Well, I would just pose the question, like, in an ideal world, and if you could dream the dream aloud, so what would be, like, how would you envision, like, Littleton and being multimodal usable and having bike paths, trails and sidewalks
I'd
and
have
potential.
two comments to make on that. One is, and just fixated on the commuter rail link, that there's so much, that just from Mass DOT's perspective, there is so much emphasis on making sure that you're connecting your transportation hubs, in our case, the commuter rail station, with the final destinations, that Littleton is blessed with a commuter rail station, and we've got to have linkage of that station to to the rest of the world, to the employment areas heading, not only heading towards Littleton Common, but heading, heading in the other direction on Foster Street towards other businesses. That's one. The other is more from the, say, the bike path, bike lane approach, that the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail passes us by.
and
It's
it's
in
so
Westford,
close.
it's in Acton, it's in Lowell, it's in Framingham, it's not in, and it abuts my property in Concord, but it's not in Littleton. And is there some way to, for us to get connected, to have Littleton get connected to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail? So that's just a top priority.
Yeah, I think Rick Finley wants to
Let's
talk
look
about
that
one
up.
through Cloverdale.
See,
But once
might
you
have
get
to
to
be
the.
on
Now that-
street.
now that all the,
There's a way to connect.
Foliage has been.
Okay.
That's just my input.
Yep.
That's not a spot to look at the gap. What's the gap? What are the barriers? Is it a legal barrier? Is it a physical barrier? Is it a mental barrier?
Yes, I definitely hear linking the T, having the common and making that more accessible, trails being like,
Yeah. And if
Priority
there is
areas.
an opportunity for us to use, that there's another group that we didn't mention tonight, but we do have a Littleton Common Committee that the board had established, and that, I think we have the time, we're going to go for a September 15th application. We will have enough time to make sure that we can put you, I would like to put you in touch directly with that group, because it's an opportunity for some streetscape improvements there, which we don't get to do much of.
I'm sure they have ideas.
All right, that's good. Let's do that, and then,
So what you got out of tonight was 2 more months for, moved it up from July.
well, I was gonna suggest, like, you and I can figure out the next time we
Yes,
sit,
yeah.
but it looks like it would be early July, and assuming we.
Yeah, for the next
can get-
meeting, yeah.
And we can get in touch with all these committees and
Probably
everything prior to
the week
that.
after the 4th, I think.
Yeah,
We could shoot for
okay,
Week of the
good.
week of the 11th.
Where do we extend our
I think we're September 1.
1st?
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
should be good. I think,
We can submit our Tier 2 plan until September 1st, but
Yeah.
we're looking at submitting the Tier 3 application
yeah.
for September 15th. So
should
we're going to get that Tier 2 plan in earlier than September 1st.
yeah, I would say we should be able to get that in no later
August.
than August 1st. Depends on what approvals we need from
Right.
the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, we'll have it, our final, with that timetable, then the 25th of July would be our point for a decision from the Board of Selectmen on this plan. Monday, that's a Monday?
You said 25th of July?
Yeah, if is that the Monday?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah. We meet on the 11th and the 24th.
Yeah, so, yeah, we meet the week after the 4th, we have the draft items and everyone gets their final.
Yeah, we can have,
say.
we can have,
Wrap
we can
it
have a
up.
meeting the week of the 11th with our groups and,
It'd be May. Still be May.
and then bring the matter forward for a vote from the selectmen on July 25th.
Make it so much easier.
Great.
Good, all right, well, thank you.
This is an
Thank you.
exciting project. This is great work. Wow. Thank you all. Thank you all for
Thanks for getting your input.
bringing it all together. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bill, I wanted to mark your list to show you which people are being.
Thank you.